Good morning, dear participants. Am I audible? Could someone please confirm if I'm audible?
Hello.
Raghavendra sir, could you please add Kaushik sir as
I can unmute now. Hi. I hope I'm audible, right? Yeah.
so your voice is slightly lower end?
Is it better now?
Yes, this is better. Great.
Okay. So are you going to
Good
wait?
morning, everyone.
Yeah.
We'll just see for a minute so that everybody joins. Already people are
Sure.
joining. So we'll just wait for a minute so that a couple of more people could join.
Sure. Yeah.
Then we'll get started. Good morning, dear participants. We welcome you all for the day 2 of the workshop of the FDP. We have with us today Mr. Kaushik Reddy, who is a Senior Assistant Vice President at Wells Fargo. Mr. Kaushik Reddy received his bachelor's degree in Electronics and Communication from VIT University, Vellore in 2014. He has over 10 years of industry experience. He has experience in plethora of technical tools and technologies, varying from Spring Cloud technologies to Hibernate, OpenGPA, jQuery, database design, etc. We welcome you, sir, for our session.
Thank you, Karthik.
Over to you for the session, sir.
Sure. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. So I will start sharing my screen. Okay.
So your voice is again on a slightly lower end.
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes, this is better.
Okay. Please do let me know, like in between, if there is any discrepancy. Okay. Yeah. So I think I'm sharing
Yeah.
my screen. Let me know if you're able to see my screen. Okay.
Yes, we are able to see your screen.
Yeah. So thanks, Karthik, for the introduction. So yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Kaushik. So I'm working as Senior AVP with Wells Fargo in uh, commercial and digital banking domain. I do have 10 years of experience in Java J2E technologies. So today I'm going to share my experience with this GitHub Copilot and how I'm leveraging this Copilot in my day-to-day development. and how we are using this Copilot in improving our coding standards and how we are improving the performance of the applications. So I listed down some list of use cases. So today what we will do, we will go via the list of use cases, which are primarily we are leveraging from the Copilot. And also I will show some hands-on for each of the use case so that it would be familiar for you to understand. Uh, Okay. So before we get into this Copilot, right, or AI things, so if you look at the last 10 years into the industry, right, the IT industry, so the technology keeps evolving. Okay, so when I started my career, we used to work on a MVC project where it's a plain servlet based framework, and we have to do all the manual configurations. Okay, so it used to take a lot of time for any developer to build a simple screens also. So, and then after 2, 3 years, there comes a framework called Spring, where the configurations would be taken care by the framework. So it was a bit easy for the developers to do the configuration. Okay. And then comes the Spring Boot, where all the auto configurations, everything would be taken care by the framework. Like if you look at the Spring, all the libraries or jars, which we have to do a manual configuration. I remember when we are initially setting up a project, right? It used to take a week to set up the project using the Spring itself. Now, within with the Spring Boot, we resolve that issue. So, and now people are talking about the AI, right? So, like I mentioned, every few years there'll be a new technology that will be coming in, and at the end, if you see, right, every time there is a new technology, which is helping the developers to code easier, make their life easy. Because, like I mentioned, you don't need to do all the configurations. You can make some, you can utilize these tools, and it's directly it will improve your performance, right? Like initially, if it used to take a week or 2 weeks to build a normal application, now you can actually do it within 3, 4 days. So that's how the latest tools are helping the developers. Okay. So these are some of the use cases which I listed down, which we were using this tool Copilot in our day-to-day development. And I will go one by one. Okay. And I'll also try to share my experience on these use cases and how it used to be before and how we were doing with the Copilot now. Okay. So the first one is converting the legacy code to the modern code using the GitHub Copilot. Okay. Since I'm coming from the banking domain, so the biggest flaw with the banking domain, if you see, right, just look at any of the banking applications, be it India or okay. Let's say SBI or HDFC Bank or Kotak Bank, which were there from the last 20, 30 years, right? If you look at their applications, be it net banking application or any of their portals, they're not in line with what the e-commerce portal used to, right? Like if you look at Amazon or Azio, so their portals used to be a bit fast, and even the UI, if you look, right, it used to be good. But now, whereas if you look at the SBA net banking app or a Kotak Mahindra net banking app or even the mobile app as well, so they're not very much in line with the technology. The reason these are the legacy banks, right? They're working from the last 20, 25 years, and they have the legacy code too. Whereas if you compare them with the new age banks, right? IDFC First Bank and the very recently added banks, like from last 5, 6 years, their apps, if you look, they are a bit better compared with the legacy banks. So the reason is when it comes to the banking, right? One of my colleague, okay, so he's a part of the team who built that SBA net banking app in the initial I think somewhere around 2000 2004. He was in that team which built that SBI net banking app. And I when I had this discussion with him, he was even telling they don't have any documentation, they don't have any requirement discussions also. So even the requirements to build an app, right, they used to fax those requirements, not even in the email, because they used to think that emails are not secure. So they used to receive all the requirements in the kind of fax machine, and you looking at that, they used to build the applications. Okay. So all the legacy applications, if you see, there are very minimal documentation. And that's the reason now, if somebody wants to upgrade your legacy application to the new age, like any new age technologies, right? It would be very difficult for someone to do it. And more than that difficulty, the chance of missing a use case is the biggest problem in the industry. Like, what if we miss a scenario? Like, if you just look at the code, it's very difficult to understand like what are the scenarios they're actually handling it. Like, if you, let's say you upgraded it, and if you miss two, three scenarios, then it might cause a lot of impact, right? Let's compare the banking and the e-commerce. Let's say your e-commerce portal got upgraded, okay? You upgrade your e-commerce portal, and because of some issue, it went down for 2 hours. So will there be an impact? Yes, there will be an impact for the commerce portal. But if you look at the customers, right? Let's say I wanted to purchase a t-shirt there, and the portal is not working. So I can wait for an hour or 2 hours, and then I can do the purchase, right? It's not a direct impact on the customer. But imagine if you upgraded a banking app and it went down for 2 hours. Let's say the HDFC Bank went down for 2 hours. So look at the impact, okay? If I'm at the hospital, if I'm at a restaurant paying my bill and if my card doesn't work, and if I'm not able to make the payment, so the impact is where the stopping the banks to upgrade all the legacy code to the new age application. That doesn't mean they're not upgrading, but they're taking a lot of time to upgrade. Okay. So now with the Copilot, it's very easy to compare with the manual way of reading the code and trying to understand all the edge case scenarios and all. Now we are leveraging this Copilot in upgrading this legacy code to the modern code. Like, I would say it's something like a game changer, especially in the banking industry, where apps are migrating from the legacy to the modern architecture, be it from monolithic architecture to this microservices architecture. Now, majority of the banks are using this Copilot. So for this use case, I will show you some sample example, which will actually help you to understand. So for example, I took one legacy code, like whatever you are seeing on screen, it's a bit legacy one. So all it is doing is calculating. It's just an example I was showing. So it's not bit complicated, but I want to help you to understand how we can convert the legacy code to a new the new edge code. Okay. Now what this sample legacy order processor is doing, it is actually calculating the total sales, total orders, and the average sales per customer. Okay. Even this, when I directly look at the code, right? If you just look at this method, which I'm extremely sorry, I'm showing this code in the Java, but what are topics I'm discussing, right? It's a general one. Like, although since I'm familiar with the Java, I'm showing you the code in the Java, but it can be applicable for any of the code, like be it Python or React also. Okay. So this code, which you are seeing on screen, is a bit legacy one. For example, if you look at it's a manual for loops and you're calculating all the calculations manually. And just by looking at the code, it's very difficult for anyone to understand what they're actually trying to do in the code. Okay. Now, in this case, what we can do, we can make use of Copilot. Okay. But prior to Copilot, what you used to do, you have to manually iterate, you have to do some sample testing, you write some JUnits to understand what scenarios it is actually handling. But now I can do it with just one click. Okay. So so Copilot has this feature called explain this. So what this will do, it will read your code, it will read your file, and it will try to understand all the scenarios what your code is going to handle. And it will kind of document you to understand what your code is doing. Okay. So let me show you. So sh- I'll just select an option called explain this. Okay. So it will read through my code. It will try to understand what this legacy code is all about. So you can see on screen, right? So it is trying to break down your entire code and it is trying to explain you what your code is doing. So you can see it is telling you that there is an order object class which is created and there is a process order method which takes the list of order objects and it is calculating the sales, orders, and sales per customer. So even though there is nowhere you mentioned any comment or anything, it is trying to read the object names and it is trying to understand what the developer is actually trying to do there. So you can see now in this way, you can actually understand what your legacy code is actually doing. Okay. Now the next step is to upgrade this. So I know what my code is actually doing. I do understand what's the edge case scenarios this code is handling. Now the next step is how I can advance my code to the new technology. So two ways we can actually do it. One, you can completely rely on this Copilot, and you can actually add a comment here saying to completely upgrade it using what are the best practices in the industry. You can just mention that so that it will actually take care. It will refactor your code. It will, wherever it is possible, it will try to convert the code. But the best approach is first you have to understand what your legacy code is doing about, then try to understand, then go into the code and note down what are the issues with the code from your side. Don't completely rely on the tool itself, Copilot itself. Don't let Copilot drive you. Okay. So try to understand what are the uh, features that are lagging in that legacy code. Okay. For example, if you look at this piece of code, after you understand what this is doing from the Copilot, now try to look at the code. So one issue you can see they're using a manual for loops, which is a old way of doing it in Java. And you can see these calculations here, right? It's a manual calculation. There are better ways to do it using the streams. Okay. So you can actually list down what our features are missing in your code, and then you can actually ask Copilot to do it. So let me add a comment here. Okay. So what is this class name? Yeah. So there's something like a prompt. You have to give a prompt, and it's so yeah. I will mention refactor. I'll give the class name here. So first of all, they're not using streams, they're using a manual for loop. So I can mention some streams API. Oh, each method selection. Okay. Now what it will do, it will upgrade your code. Like what I asked is to upgrade using the streams API. So streams API, you can actually take out this for loop here. You can do it in the streams, and also all these calculations you can see, right? This again, you can do it with the streams only. So before I copy my code here, I want you to compare the difference. So I will just copy this code and then I will move it here. So this is the main process order method. So, so this is the legacy one. Now let me copy this. Now this is the code which was generated by the Copilot. So now look at the difference, how it was before. So now prior before in the legacy code, we are doing a manual for loop and the manual calculation, right? Now you can see we are leveraging the streams here. So it is iterating over the stream, it is calculating the sum, and the entire code was actually upgraded. And cons the way it is upgraded, it will actually handle all the edge case scenarios what your legacy code is also doing for. Now, if you just look at this code, it's very easy to understand too, because it's just a stream and you can understand what they're actually doing. They take an order object and they're calculating the price, overall price. And finally, they're doing a total sale price, right? They're doing a sum of all the prices to get the total sales. So it actually converted your entire code without your any effort, just by giving one prompt. Okay, so it's that easy to upgrade your any legacy code to the new code. And it's not just limited to this. And for example, you can actually further add the prompts. Like if you look at this code, you see something like some performance is some you can improve, right? So then you can actually also ask the Copilot. So in the method, process orders. See if there is a chance to improve the performance. Because if you look at the volume of the banks, right, there are multiple a lot of users used to use your back. So performance is also important. So when you can also use this NFRs, right, non-functional requirements like performance thing to uh, you can leverage that from the Copilot itself, and we'll see if that can upgrade the code. Okay. Let's see. Now you can look at this, right? It's not nowhere I'm using a parallel stream here. Now if you see it upgraded it to the parallel stream. So as in when there are 2, 3 threads trying to access, right? There can be a parallel stream which can be done. And this will actually save the time when multiple people started using this app. So now again, it is further improved to this. So let me copy this method again. Okay. Now, if you look at this in this way, you can actually fine tune your legacy code just by using the Copilot, and it hardly take 5-10 minutes for me to upgrade, right? So, although the code whichever I was showing is like level one complicated code, but imagine there is a bit extremely complicated code where there are multiple loops. Okay, multiple loops and very difficult for someone to understand. Then you can actually leverage this tool to understand the code. And if you want to do any modifications, you can make use of this Copilot to upgrade your code to the latest new gen technologies. In between, if you have any questions, you can actually stop me. Feel free to ask the questions so we can actually discuss. Okay, and I'll also plan for over 5-10 minutes Q&A at the end of this session so that we can go through a Q&A. Okay. So this is about this first use case to upgrade your legacy code to the modern code using the GitHub Copilot. There's one primary advantage which we use day to day because even our application, it's a legacy one which we are trying to upgrade to the um, microservices architecture from the monolith. So we're in day to day, we use this tool especially to understand the legacy code, to understand the edge case scenarios. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So the next use case is about the error detection and fixing with the GitHub Copilot. Okay. So what do you mean by error detection? So let's say I got a requirement to build an API component. Okay, so any API. So usually when I get an API, but let's take an example. Okay, so I'm building an application. I got this requirement to build an application where I can pass the place name as an input. So that it will calculate the temperature there and it will return back the temperature. Okay, so this is my requirement. So when I started working on this requirement, it's not just about the business logic, right? Like what I have to do in the code, but you also need to focus on the error handling, how your application is prone to the error handling. You have to think about all the exception handling, how you can actually handle the exception, be it logging the exception into the logs, and all these edge case, like even the performance which I was talking about. You have to think about a lot of other factors apart from the only business logic. Okay. So prior to Copilot, how the developer used to think, right? So when they start writing an application, a new API or anything, they always has to focus not just on the business logic. Every step, every line they write the code, they always think about the non-functional requirements also. Like, what if a null pointer exception comes here? I have to handle it. So we have to write. Always, our focus will always get deviated from the business logic, right? So, but now with the Copilot, the biggest advantage is, especially for a developer, you just try you just focus on the business logic and let Copilot give you the boilerplate code, be it uh, error management, like I said, error or exceptional handling, or speeding up the app. So you can just focus on the business logic, which will in turn speed up your development, right? So for this, I will take one example. Okay, we will create one utility, one small utility. While creating the utility, I will show you how the Copilot. I'll take help from the Copilot to write my code or to improve my code also. Okay. So for the second use case, I will create one utility. Okay. So what? what this utility will do, it will just read a file. Okay, so it will read a file, it will read the content in the file, and it will try to convert that into uppercase and it will save into another file. Okay, it's a simple use case. So we will write that utility, and in the process of writing this utility, I will show you how it is helping me to speed up my development. Okay, so let me create a new file. Okay, sorry, right, it's the utility. Okay, so I will create one utility class. Right. Let me clear the Copilot session. So you can just click on here, it will start a new session. Okay. Or let me rename it to. So always make sure to name the variables or the class names properly so that your Copilot will try to understand what you are trying to do. Okay. So let me rename it. I will say file processor. Stop utility. Okay. Yeah. We'll create. Just look at this. So look at this. So I just started writing a main method here. Immediately it understood I was trying to create it. Okay. All right. Just look at how fast it will help us to improve the development. So let me create one file path. But see, you can see here, right? When I gave the name of the variable input file itself, it is trying to understand is trying to do something with the file name. So you can see the string value. It is generating input.txt. Automatically it is suggesting that code. Now, the moment I change it to file path, you can see immediately it is trying to give you the path of the file. See, I'll just click on tab. Okay, for now you'll put this path, and after adding a file, you'll change the path. Okay, just look at this. Since I mentioned input file path, the moment I clicked on enter, it is also trying to understand he's trying to do something in the output file also. See, it suggested this code. Let's keep this code. Okay. Now let me create one utility method. Okay. See, it is also suggesting you to pass these variables. Okay, process file. Okay. Yeah. Now let me create this. Um, Let me create this method here. Okay. Yeah. Now in this, I will add a reader to read the content in the file. Buffered reader. Okay. Let me import this. Now just see. I will try to read the content in the file. Okay. New buffered reader. See, the moment I create an object, what it is also suggesting me to what value to pass as an input to this buffer reader. Meaning if someone who doesn't know anything about this file reader or file writer, okay, so even for them, it is really helpful, right? It is suggesting you the code here. Okay, now I created a buffer reader. Similarly, okay, so before I go to writer, so now you can see there is an exception which is expecting. So always try to add try catch here. Okay. Okay. Now let me add this writer also. So if the moment I type writer, I think it should I have to import this class. Okay. Now see. Just give some time. After you enter the name of the variable, see it generated here again. Now let me import this. Okay. I think it again need a try catch. Or we can add another catch. See, just look at this. So let's say I don't know what exception this file writer can throw. Okay. Prior, if without Copilot, it will actually take time to understand what are the exceptions that can be thrown from this class and to identify. Now, see, it actually showed me to catch the IO exceptions. So yeah. Now I did a catch. Now I'll write a final clock to close my, yeah, see, close the resources. So what are the resources I have? One is, okay, before that, we have to write the actual content here. Okay. Now let me create a string line. You don't need line. Now my line. You can see here, right? It is even generating like it, and by this time it would have understand like I gave the input file path, reader and writer. So something he's trying to read and something he's trying to write into that file. So it was able to understand, it was suggesting me some code. Okay. And I can actually make use of this code if it is actually meeting my requirement. If not, at least whatever it is required, right? For me, I just need to read the content in the file and just convert that into uppercase and just write it. Okay. So what I can do now, since I know my requirement, I can just add a comment like this. See what I will tell the Copilot. So what the Copilot will do based on your comment, it will try to understand what you are trying to do and it will generate the code. Okay. What I will write here, this is again like a prompt. The comment it is like a prompt to your Copilot. Okay. Convert to uppercase and write to output file. Okay. After entering your comment, just give a second or 2 seconds time, so it will generate the code. See, it's already generated. Okay. See what it is trying to do is write. It is converting my line to the uppercase, and it is actually writing it to the new line. Okay. For that, my line. Okay, it is reading the line. Okay. So based on the comment, now you can see, right? It is trying to convert your comment into the code. So it is taking your comment as a prompt and is generating the code. Now we'll close the resource. Okay. So all you have to do is reader dot close, writer dot close. Okay. Now see what is the error. It's not in the scope. Okay. So if you look at this, I declare this reader inside the trike, so it is not able to find out the scope. It is not in the scope for the final block. So if I understand, then I can fix it. If let's say I don't understand, what is this issue about? Like when I hover over, it's telling me cannot resolve symbol reader, bring buffer reader into the scope, something blah blah. So if I don't understand what it is actually trying to do, what it is trying to suggest, I can just do right click GitHub Copilot, fix this. So if at all there is any error in your class, it will actually try to fix that error. Okay, see how good it is. You can see here, right? The scope is not, it is defined inside try, so it is not able to read the reader object is not in the scope of finally. So you can see here, the buffer reader and buffer writer was declared outside the try. Okay, we'll do the same. So just copy. See, now your code, see, it hardly took some 5-10 minutes for me to write the code, right? With imagine if you don't have the Copilot, right? We have to rely on other resources, like be it like you have to go through some documentations, or you will do the Google and you'll understand how the buffer reader and buffer writer works, right? So it used to take a lot of time. Just with the Copilot, with with this IDE only, I was able to complete the code. Okay. Now we'll do around. We'll create. Okay, what are the file I created here? Input.txt. Okay. inside resources. For now, for timing, we'll put it inside templates. Okay. New file in text. Okay. Okay. So you all small. Okay. Now let's go back. We'll test the code. We'll just run this. Okay. Now you see there is an exception coming here, which says file not found exception. So because my put it inside the templates, it's not in the resources. Okay, let me add that. Sorry. Both I'll put this as a main resources. Okay, let me try now. And I will also show you how to handle this exception using the copilot itself. Ideally, it should not throw an error. In case if the file is I gave a wrong file, it should handle the exception. It will log or it will do a log, but it should not break something like this. Okay. I'll also tell you that once I validate the code, then we can actually do that. Okay. Okay. Now it got successful. Now you can see output is also generated. Just see it is converting my text into the uppercase. Okay. Now going back, when there is a wrong path here, what happened? It was breaking like this. Now you understand there is some exception that is coming in your code. Okay. And also, after writing the code, you can also take help from your copilot to actually improvise the code, like I mentioned. So if there are exceptions, so what I will ask copilot now to read the code, okay, and see if there is anything that it can improve, be it like, for example, in this case, this is a wrong path. So there is a chance that null pointer exception can come, that invalid path exception will come. Okay. So what I have to do, I have to validate these paths, whether this path is actually correct or not. Okay. Now go to the Copilot. What I will type the prompt here. There is no fixed. It's not like I have to give some fixed kind of prompt. It's just a human language. It will understand. Okay. Analyze my class name. Analyze file processor for any, what can we say? Any potential null pointer exception, and also validate input file paths. Okay. And what can we improve in the code? Mm, So just for the demo, I will say, see this try catch again, it's not is a modern way of doing the try catch, right? Because now we have try with resources also. So let's ask to use to try to update the code with try with. So I will say, and also use try with resource management. Now it will go through your code. It will understand where and all there is a chance for a null pointer. It will update your code. And also the second thing what we asked it is to validate the input file path. So it will validate the input file path. And finally, we asked to do a try with. The good thing is whatever it is updating the code, it will give a proper explanation here, like how it is before, after. You can actually go through this uh, the code which is generated. You can understand what it is actually trying to do, how it improved the code also. It's another good example. So let me copy the code. Okay, before I completely move this code, I will copy this code just for your comparison how it changed. So this. Okay. Now let me copy it here. So, okay. Now look at this. Before, I was not validating the path. Now it is actually trying to validate my path and it is throwing the exception. Properly it is handling. Like before it was actually breaking the code, right? Now it will throw the illegal argument exception. Now imagine this is an API, and if you're able to uh, do the exception management also. Now you can catch this exception somewhere in your outer layer and you can return some error code also to the API. So in this way, this is how you can actually properly handle the exceptions. Even if there is an invalid scenario where there is a scenario where there are chances to break, so your API should not break, right? In case of exceptions, you should return the error code to your consumer. So in this way, you can actually handle the exception. You can improve the code. Now look at this, how it was before. It was a bit old way of doing it, right? Try, catch, finally. Now see, it is directly doing a try with the uh, resource system. So that is done. It validated my input file path. And what else I asked? I asked for a null pointer exception also. I think it generated here. Okay. So you can see here, right? There are chances that reader can be null. So it added a condition also there. Okay. Now, coming back to your main use case. Okay, so error detection and fixing with Git hello. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this use case demo, as a developer, I can focus only on the business logic, right? Imagine, just remember when I started writing code, nowhere I was thinking about what if there is a null pointer coming up here? How can I handle the null pointer scenario here? No, I was just focusing on my business logic alone because I know the copilot is there to help me to cover all these edge scenarios, whether it's null pointer exception or to improve my code. Even here, right? I can do a try with resources when I was writing itself. But since I'm more familiar with uh, legacy code, okay, because for example, in my case, okay, I think till last year I was working on Java 8, and recently last year I think we upgraded to Java 11. Even now I was not very much familiar with the Java 17 features. Okay, in that case, whatever language I'm comfortable, whatever version I'm comfortable, let me write my business logic with that and leverage your copilot to upgrade your code. Since I'm more familiar with try catch than try with resources, while writing my business logic, I wrote this try catch, and then once I'm completed my code, once I tested my code, okay, the positive scenario, not the exception scenario, if it is working, then I can make use of this copilot to cover all this, like be it handling the exceptions or upgrading your code or even the performance, which I was showing in the first example, right? So in this way, it is really helping the developers to speeden up their development. Okay, this is one very good example you can see, right? And you can also see how it was suggesting me the code. The the moment I declared the variable name itself, it was actually trying to understand what this guy is trying to do, and it is generating some code, right? So that is really helpful when it comes to the development. Okay, so this is the second use case. I think I covered the two, three cases in the same example. But yeah, you have any questions on this till now so far? Anything you're not able to understand? Okay. So the next one, I think I covered this in the same example only, which is comment to code feature with GitHub Copilot. Okay. So I will again show you. You remember when I was writing the code here, I added a comment and it immediately generated the code. So wherever in the code you think there is some correction or some changes needs to be done, you don't need to go to the prompt, mention the line number and give the prompt. Instead, you can actually enter a comment and Copilot will try to understand and it will generate the code. So let me show you an example. Okay, let's say there is a scenario where you should not throw an exception. You have to eat up the exception. Okay, eat up in the sense you have to log the exception. Okay, so for example here, what I will do, I'll just add a comment, log the exception using system println. Just press enter. Just wait for some time. Look at this. It was generating the code. So wherever you want any modifications, you can just add a comment, wait for a second or two, it will generate the code. So in this way, even to write the prompts, it's very easy now, right? Imagine if you don't have this option to add a comment, and then you have to write a prompt in a such a way it has to understand, okay, in my try, I have a catch where I have file not where I'm catching the file not found exception. I should not throw the exception. Instead, I should log the exception. So you have to give a lot of prompt there. I think if I remember, I think it will not catch the line numbers. You cannot directly give like line number 41 fix something. I think it's not it will not go by a line number, the prompts, but to actually give that, you have to mention the catch block where you're catching the file not found exception and do so and so change. But instead, with this comment to code, it's a very good feature where you just add a comment, it will generate the code. Okay. Anything like, for example, add a log. What else we can do? Okay. Okay. So what I would say, add a catch to handle any other exception. Let's say there is a generic exception. Okay. Just press enter. Delays there. Yeah. So yeah. So if there is any, in case of any generic exception, then you can actually throw this exception. Okay. So yeah. So in this way, wherever in the code, at any point of time, you want to add some modifications or do any changes, you can add a comment there. And let's say there is an existing code, you got a requirement to update your code, okay? Then you can actually do that. So just by adding a comment, you don't need to refactor or spend more time to understand what are the impacts in the code. Okay. So whenever you add a comment, when there is a change in your code, it will automatically correct the impactful code also, wherever there is a dependency also. Okay. So this is one good feature, which is comment to code feature in the GitHub Copilot. Okay. And the next one is my favorite feature, which is the documentation part. Okay, so which is code readability and the documentation. Okay, now I'll show that example. I will use the same file and I'll show you. Now, imagine if you're working for any product companies or if you're working on a framework side, right? The So it's very important for any framework team or a product team to come up with a good documentation of your file. Uh, Let's go to any of the Java classes, Java files, okay, which in Java library. Okay, so now go to this file, buffered reader. This is a library, okay? I'm importing this library, right? Just go to this library, look at this file. It's not just the code here, right? They gave enough information, right? So there is a good documentation. What is the reason they're giving this documentation? Tomorrow, if somebody wants to make use of your library or your utilities, when they go into your file, the code needs to be readable. Like someone, let's say I wanted to understand what this buffer reader is doing, at least the basic outline should be there. See, it says creates a buffering character input stream that uses the input buffer of a specific size. So this will actually help the people who are using your libraries to understand what you're trying to do. Now, let's say this is a utility which I created. Now, tomorrow, if I want to share this to any other team, now I have to come up with a good, either it beats comments or I have to give some proper documentation, right? To do that, I have to understand what I was trying to do, and then I have to come up with all the comments, right? Instead, we can do it with one single fix, GitHub Copilot, generate docs. See, It is generating the code. It understood the code. It was generating the comments there, good documentation. So it's very easy for someone to understand the code. Now, if you see, there are no comments I mentioned here. See, every line it was giving a comment and it was explaining it is explaining what they're trying to do with this lines of code. Okay. Now just copy this code. Here. Sorry. See, just look at how beautiful it is before and now. Okay. Now, when someone just look at your code, it's very easy for them to understand. Okay. And like I mentioned, in case if you are working on a uh, framework side, or if you're working for any product, right, it's very important. The documentation is very important, and that is something which will also take a lot of time from the developer, right, to come up with the documentation. See, coding, it will actually, once you're understood the logic, it shouldn't take more time. But when it comes to documentation, usually it will take a lot of time, because it will go to multiple reviews, because you have to share this with all your clients, right? So they have to understand. So it has to go via multiple scrutiny. So it used to take a lot of time, especially with the documentation. Now see, it is how fast we are able to generate the documentation here, and it's very easy. And even let's say if you come here and if you don't know anything of this file also, like I mentioned before, I think I already showed you, right? There's something called as explain this, which will also give the proper explanation for this code. Okay. And I think I already showed some fix this. And there is another one called simplify this. I think I missed that. Okay. So you can see here, simplify this. Let's say usually every company or every project will have their own set of standards. Okay, you call it, for example, there are some Sonar Sonar. We integrate our code with Sonar, right, for all the security or the code improvements, and now it will suggest. So sometimes I see in some teams they will put a limit. Okay, for example, this process file, they will set that Sonar rule that your method should not cross beyond 50 lines, and your method should not be very complicated, because it'll always be a problem with the readability, right? So let's say if you want to simplify this, you can actually break it down into multiple methods. So this entire method, if you want, you can actually break it down, right? So instead of we doing it manually, we can ask the Copilot to simplify it. The same code, now it will break down further into different methods, and it will be further easy for someone to understand. You can see here, right? In the existing method, there are no separate method for validate file path. See, it is in the same method only here, what I was checking. But instead, see how it updated now. It created a utility method validate file path, which will be called here to validate. In this way, it is actually simplifying your code, and also it is more efficient now, if you see, right? Now, there is another method which want to use this validate file path. It can make use of this, right? Now, let me copy it again. I hope you will understand now. See how at every step I was trying to update my code. Okay, so at first I started writing a basic business logic, and then I I asked Copilot to handle all the exception scenarios. I asked Copilot to improve my code with all the new features. And then I asked Copilot to add documentation to it. And now I'm asking it to simplify it further. So now if you see the way it was before and how it is now, I just wrote this business logic code, and imagine and just look at how good the code is now. Okay. So yeah. So in this way, you can use this featured for documenting your files, documenting your libraries also. Okay. And the next use case is writing the JUnit tests with the GitHub Copilot. Okay. Like I mentioned, when it comes to the end-to-end development, right? Writing the code is a part of it, but there are a lot of things across it, be it documentation. Are now every company is coming up with this JUnit test cases, right? It's mandatory for a developer to write the JUnit test cases to cover all the scenarios before it goes to the testing phase. You as a developer has to validate your code by writing this JUnits. You have to cover all the end-to-end scenarios. Even in our project, we use this. We have to write the JUnits. And since it's a banking project, we have this limit like 100% code coverage rule also. So your JUnit should cover every line in your code, every scenario in your code. There is a tool which we integrated which will validate if you don't. For example, if my JUnits are covering only 80% of the code, if 20% is missing, then that tool will highlight that this code is missing coverage of 20 lines, and it will not allow you to push the code. So it is it was validated to that extent. Now it's very difficult for a developer, right? So to write the code and then to cover this 100%. See, 90% is easy, but to achieve this 100%, for example, if you have a if condition, and if there are some 3, 4 conditions you added, every scenario you have to cover. So imagine how tough it is for a developer to write the JUnits. It's very, very difficult, right? Now, it actually, I use a lot of Copilot while writing the JUnits only, because I can just give my scenario, I'll explain the scenario, it will generate the JUnit. Okay. For example, let me write JUnits here, okay, for this generate test. So when I just give generate test, it will just cover the basic scenarios. Okay. You can see it is generating a test file. It is covering basic test cases here. Okay. So you can see here what are there is one positive test case I can see here. It also added a test case in case of input file does not exist. The first scenario where I gave a wrong path, right? That scenario. And there is another file. What if file itself does not exist? Okay, this input file does not exist and output file does not exist. This scenario it is covering. So I can also ask Copilot, could you please just one line, okay? So just could you please add more test cases so that I can have 100% code coverage and 100% scenario coverage for every scenario in the code. Now it will cover every scenario, every line, and it will give you the 100% code coverage. See, it is adding all the initially it was only 3, right? Now it is even checking for the directory. It is also checking for input output exception. So we have only one catch block, right? If you look at initially it was generated without any exception scenario. So this line will never be covered, right? With this test cases. Now, after we asked it to generate for 100% code coverage, 100% test scenarios, so it generated for every scenario in this file. Now, if I run this test file, I can see the coverage as 100%. So see, it hardly, like I mentioned, imagine writing these test cases, okay? It will at least take an hour or two just for this simple code alone. At least an hour it will take to cover all the scenario. But now with just one prompt, one simple prompt, it was generating you all the test cases which will cover all the scenarios, okay? Usually, I'm just on an average, I was saying, so if there is a complicated implementation file, right, it will have some 600, 700 lines of code. What if that file is a legacy code? You upgraded it to a new, you upgraded the entire file using a new technology. You use Copilot and you converted it to use with, let's say you upgrade from Java 4 to Java 17, okay? Now, the big challenge is to write the test cases. Or if there are 700, 800 lines of code, there are some 10, 20 methods. And to write the JUnit test cases for every scenario, it was hell of a job for a developer. Now, just by using this Copilot, you can generate the test cases, and not just simply generating the test cases, you can generate the test cases to cover the 100% code coverage. See, so that's another benefit. I personally, I use this Copilot mostly for generating the test cases because, like I mentioned, it was a legacy code I was working. We are upgrading it to the new Java 17 now. So after updating it, we have to make sure it has to be covered 100% in code coverage and also the line coverage, also scenario coverage. So we use Copilot there to generate the test cases. And another advantage of generate, like example, uh, another advantage, just by looking at these test cases, you can get a rough idea on what your code is actually trying to do. You can, if at all you want to try to understand the code, you can run this test method and you can debug the code to understand each scenario and how the values are actually going into and how different scenarios are handling in your legacy code also. So that's a big advantage. Okay, so even if you are not familiar, let's say you understand the entire code, but there are some edge cases which you're not able to understand. Even that edge cases you can actually understand by going through all these different test cases when there is 100% code coverage in your test cases. Okay. That's an advantage. So that for top five, the first five, whatever I was showing here, these use cases are the primary use cases which will actually help the developers in their day-to-day development. Okay. And apart from this, the learning new APIs and libraries through Copilot suggestions. Like I mentioned, I was showing an example. I am not very much familiar with Java 17, okay, because we recently upgraded, and I even after upgrading, the lot of code is still in Java 8 only and Java 11. Okay. Now, as a developer, yeah, obviously I have, if given an opportunity, you have to learn the new technology. But if you're not familiar and if you're trying to upgrade, just like how I was doing this try catch, I will write my code in whatever way I know, and then I will ask the Copilot to update it. And it's not just updating, it is giving a very good explanation for you. Just by going through that explanation, what your Copilot is doing, you can actually update, you can actually learn the new libraries or new features in any of the and new features. For example, if you're using Java or Python, if there's a new library coming in, you just ask your code to update to it. And looking at the code, how it got updated, the before and after, you can compare. And it's very easy for a person to learn new technologies or new libraries using this Copilot. I will tell you an example. Uh, I'm not very familiar with. So we do write DB database queries and all, but we were not very much familiar with PLSQL. Okay, especially the UI developers in our team, we are not very much familiar with PLSQL because they work only on the UI. Now, there was a scenario where they have to go through some queries just to understand the requirement, because the legacy code, like I mentioned, it's a legacy code. There are a lot of queries in that. So they, just by going through the queries, they wanted to understand what they did. They copied that queries, they gave that queries as a prompt to your Copilot and asked Copilot what are the scenarios that this query is actually covering. So then Copilot, what it does, it will break down your SQL query and it will understand, it will cover all the, I mean, it will explain you each and every scenario. Now, even for someone with zero experience in PLSQL, like someone like UI developers, if they go through the code, they will actually understand what this, at least the basics of the SQL, they're able to understand. So it's very easy, like someone from UI to work on the back end, at least debug something on the back end, or someone from the back end, if they wanted to work on the UI or at least the debug side, it's very, very easy to, because it will break down you, right? It will break down. And when you, when it break down and it's giving a proper explanation on what this particular line it is actually doing, if you correlate that with the actual file, it's you can understand what these libraries are actually up to. So in this way, for a developer, it is actually helping a lot to learn new APIs or new libraries. I'll show you an example here. Okay. Let's say in Java 17, there is a feature called Atomic. Okay, I will ask Copilot to give some examples. Okay, I let you understand the integer, atomic, uh, let's say feature in Java 17. Can you give an example? Explain feature, the features. So let's say I wanted to learn this atomic feature here. This atomic integer. Okay. See. So it is giving a good explanation for atomic integer, how this atomic integer can be used in your code, and it's also giving you an example. And you can actually go on, like you can ask, okay, I don't understand what it is trying to do. Can you give further more explanation? So any new library, if you want to explore, previously we used to Google, we used to go into the libraries, the documentation of those libraries to understand. But now it's very easy for a developer to upgrade their tech stack. Just give here what library you want to explore and ask for examples, ask for good explanation, and that will actually help you. Just an example, I was showing this atomic one. Okay. So in this way, we can make use of this Copilot to improve your tech stack. And the last feature which we use commonly is the code review process, like how you can actually utilize your Copilot as a code reviewer. Unfortunately, I have this my personal laptop. I have only the developer version with me, so I cannot able to demo the last one alone, this review process. But I will explain you what this code review process is all about. How can you use this GitHub Copilot there? Okay. So wherever you are working on any change or new API, anywhere in any organization, right? If you're done with your change, if you want to push your code to the central repository, you have to raise a pull request. I hope you are aware of pull request. If not, pull request is something is like requesting reviewers to accept your code. Like you you worked on a functionality and you're done with the functionality, you want to push the functionality to a repository. Before you push, you have to raise a pull request. So the reviewers in your team, be it architects or senior architects, they are going to review your code. And if there are if they found any flaws in your code, they will add some review comments there. So you have to go back, you have to fix those review comments. Again, you have to request them for a review. They will review it. And again, if they see some issues, they'll mention that in that review comments, and you have to come back and you have to fix it. Okay. So in this way, this is how the review process used to go. There will be one, two architects in your team. When you're done with the code, you have to request them for review. They will do the code review. If there are any flaws, they'll correct it. They'll ask you to correct it, and you will make those changes. And finally, after the reviews, the code will get merged into the central repository. Now I'll tell you the challenge here. Let's take my team only exact example. We have three architects in our team, and there are almost 70 resources in the team, okay, including backend and UI. Imagine on a day, if at least 25 people raise a pull request, and it will take at least 15 minutes for some reviewer to go through your code to understand, right? So it used to take a lot of time from your reviewers, especially the architects or the senior leads in your team, to review your code, to understand your code, to find some flaws and explaining you back, and you go on fixing it. And after few fixing it again, you will ask them to review it again. So this review process is bit hectic in any of the project. Now, the good advantage using this Copilot is even before you go to your architect or your lead to review your code, you can ask the Copilot to review your code. So the Copilot is so intelligent that it will review all your code, and if there are any suggestions, it will actually suggest the code. And sorry, it will suggest the improvements in your code. And if there are any flaws in your code, it will give you a suggestion. So before you go to your reviewer to review your code, you can fix all those, at least the basic common issues which Copilot is suggesting you. And you can actually ask your reviewer to review the code. In this way, there are two advantages. One, your reviewer, yeah, of course, he has to spend a lot of time in reviewing it, but the chance for the flaws in your code will be going down because already Copilot has reviewed. You might have fixed all the basic flaws in the code. Okay, that's one example. That's one good you help with this in the review process. The second one, let's say you missed a functionality itself. Okay, you missed a functionality, and usually your reviewer will find out that is okay, there is some flaw or there is a functionality miss in this code, and he'll ask you to code it. Okay, now you have to revamp your code, you have to add another features to your code, and let's say it took another day. Now next day your reviewer might have reviewed some 10 15 PRs. He might have lost you. It's very difficult for someone to remember the code, like what the second PR or the third PR, what changes are there in the file. The next day again, you have to go and explain them. Like, this is what we discussed yesterday. I made this change, and you could please review it. And now with this now let's take the example, the reviewer asks you to fix some code, and all it take is all you just need to come back, go open your Copilot, explain the feature what it is missing, and it'll generate the code. Just add the code, like I mentioned, do a round of testing, improve your code. Immediately within 1.5 hours, hardly it's like if it is straightforward code like what we are showing, it will take at least half an hour. You can fix that and ask your reviewer to review it again. So the SDLC process, the amount of time the development is going is it actually reducing a lot. Uh, so when the review process used to take a day or 1.5 day, now we can actually reduce it to at least a half day, because even if there are some complicated changes your reviewer is asking you to do to fix in your code, it will hardly take 1 2 hours max, considering how complicated it is, just to explain by using some prompts to your Copilot, and it will generate the code based on the suggestions or the review comments, and it will immediately you can raise a PR. Okay. And like I mentioned, the test cases again. Like, if you make any changes to your code, you always need, let's say there are 20, 30 test cases. Every time there is a change in the functionality, if there is some change you are doing it, you have to come and touch the test cases also, because test cases will fail now because you're changing the functionality. Now, with this one feature, with one prompt, you can actually generate the test cases also. It will update the test case also based on whatever changes you are doing in your code. See how much time, imagine how much time it is actually saving you, right? So, and like I mentioned, the one beautiful thing is all you are doing with just one IDE only, be it IntelliJ or any IDE. Like for UI team, you can use Visual Studio. Your Visual Studio has this Copilot extension. You can use that Copilot extension. Okay. So without moving, if you remember, I nowhere I opened a Google or I was going through any documentation. I was just relying completely on the Copilot to complete my development. That's one good feature of this. Okay. So I think I covered all the major topics, and my suggestion would be, okay, before we go into Q&A, my suggestion I would ask, like, if you're familiar with UI technology, you can use this plugin for Visual Studio. Or if you wanted to explore more on the backend, be it Java or Python, you can use this plugin with the IntelliJ. And I would suggest, please do some hands-on, and setting up is very easy. You just need to go to your plugins. I'll just quickly show that. So go to your plugins, install the GitHub Copilot, and it's a paid version, but there is a 30 days free trial version also. So I would suggest it first start with the free trial version, and at least see what features you can actually leverage. I think majority of you, I think, might have spending a lot of time on the DSA, right? I remember data structures for and algorithms, right? Try DSA itself. Write your code, ask the Copilot to improvise it, like be it a time complexity, space complexity, ask for the suggestions. So when it generates the code, try to understand how you are writing it and how it is generating. In that way, you can actually improve your tech stack also. Okay. So I would suggest please go through this library once and try to set it up and do some hands-on so that you will be familiar with it. And one thing which I was telling in the second example, always write the business logic by yourself. Okay. Don't even the business logic, don't ask Copilot to generate it because uh, there is a reason why we call it as a copilot, right? Uh, do you have to drive the copilot instead? Don't fall into the copilot and it start driving you. Okay, okay. Write the business logic by yourself. Understand the code. By you can use the features like explain this or anything and understand the code. What are the improvements you want? Try to suggest that improvements from your side only and then ask Copilot, are there any further improvisations you can do so that you can in that way you can understand what you're actually trying to achieve. Okay. If you directly ask Copilot to generate the business logic itself, then it would be very difficult for you to understand your code only. Like tomorrow, if you come back and look at your code, it would be like a different script for you. So that's my suggestion. And I wanted to give some 15 minutes for any Q&A. So any questions related to Copilot or anything in general, I'm ready to take. Uh, yeah. Any questions? Questions can be anything, like it's not just limited to the Copilot. So
Hey, hi, Kaushik. Thanks for your wonderful session. I just had a small question.
yeah,
So basically, what you explained, Copilot, it's a wonderful tool, and it could be leveraged by a lot of people while they are actively doing any software development process, right?
right.
See, this is a paid version. In order for us to leverage the complete functionality of whatever it is to offer, we need to go for a paid version. However, if we as faculty have to suggest our students to leverage this, are there any tools which could be open source, which is similar to Copilot, that the students can take leverage of and improve their learning ability or coding ability?
If not Copilot, you can use normal open API, Karthik. Like we have ChatGPT or any open API tools, right, with Gemini. But it would be little difficult for the team because you have to every time copy the code and paste it there and ask for suggestions.
Yeah,
The advantage with Copilot is since it was seamless integrated with your ID itself, like every step, everything you are doing, it is trying to read what you are trying to do. So that's one advantage of Copilot. But you can still use Open API, like be it ChatGPT or
right.
Gemini, but you have to copy the entire code there and ask for the suggestions, Karthik. And
Yeah, I get it.
yeah, and this freeware, I think the see, there are two, three versions which are available in the market for this Copilot. One is a business one, and for a developer version, I think it is 30 days free trial, and then we have it's like a $10 for month, I believe, Karthik. Oh, but apart from this, I don't.
Thanks.
Only Copilot is currently we had. I don't see any other new tool which can be integrated with IntelliJ, Karthik.
Oh, thanks.
Any other questions?
Sir, can we get any images related interpretation in the Copilot?
It will not generate the images, but it will give you the flow diagram also. Let me show you. Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. This is a simple file, but still I will try to generate a flow diagram for it. Okay. Okay. What is this one? I forgot that name of that Jeremy. Okay, Mermaid, I believe. Okay. Let me. Okay. Could you generate flow diagram? could you generate flow diagram for the class file processor, which I can leverage in Mermaid? So there's a online tool called Mermaid where you can actually generate add the flow diagrams. So we'll see what okay, let me copy it. So it will not give you the blocks actually, unfortunately, because it will generate something like a code. We have to use some other tools. You can copy this code and you can use some tools like Mermaid online, which will generate the flow diagram. Let me quickly show you. So you can see here, right? We can use this third-party tool and it will generate the code here. It will be the man-made understood language here. So it will generate the process, I mean, the basic flow diagram here. All you have to do is copy it and use some tool to generate the diagram like this. If at all it's a very complicated one, you can understand the actual flow. Since we only have one file I created, no, so that's why it is something like this. Yeah. So you can generate the diagrams also. I think
Can we upload images? For example, I have a code in a paper. Can I take
right.
photo and upload?
I never tried. I think it will not allow. As far as I remember, it's not accepting the
In
file.
Chat GPT, it is allowing,
It
sir.
does. It is.
Yeah.
But I never
In Chat
tried. Probably I can. Let me. If you want, I can try now. I can take a screenshot and I can try. See, it will. You can attach the files here. Okay. Like you can see what are files you want to attach. You can attach. But I never tried taking a screenshot and attaching it. Yeah. So.
we can take screenshot and analyze that one.
Yeah, I understand that OCR capability. I don't know whether it is available for developer version or not, but yeah, I understand. ChatGPT, it is actually there. So if you take a screenshot of this and then ask it to leverage, I doubt it is there for developer version for sure. But maybe it might be there for this one in the business version. You can actually attach here and you can check.
Okay.
There is an option to attach here any file. Usually, when I open a file and ask questions, it will understand that this is asking from the same file only. But if at all you want to attach the file specifically here, so you can actually attach. Like for example, if my file processor has a dependency on buffer reader also, I can attach both these files and then I can ask questions like this.
Yes. Okay. So, in our personal opinion, which one is more caliber, sir? Like a Copilot or ChatGPT?
No, Copilot is internally using their chat OpenAPI only. I would suggest Copilot has a big advantage because ChatGPT, like I mentioned, let's say I have one question here to add. There is another validation I have to do here. Okay. So now imagine if I don't have Copilot, I have to use this ChatGPT only. I have to copy this entire code, and it's
Yes.
not just sufficient, right? If I just copy this code, it will not understand all these imports and all, right? I have to again copy the import also because if I give this file, it will not understand what this buffer reader is actually doing about, right?
Okay.
It will only read the content in the file. It will not read the entire dependencies there. So if you want to use Scope ChatGPT, you have to upload everything, all the dependencies in your files, all the imports you have to upload. Only then it will understand the end-to-end picture and then it will give the suggestion. But it's not something like that, right? Here you just need because it understands the scope of your project and what you're trying to do, and it will give you the better suggestions. I would say I mean, the ChatGPT is a bit time-taking one compared when it comes to development. Yeah.
Yes, sir, yes. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Like I mentioned, at least please try both. You can, if at all you want to use Visual Studio also for UI development. UI, I think it's more helpful compared to the backend because I see people generating the entire UI screens itself using the Copilot just with one prompt. Okay, so try building in a simple app, both UI and backend, by adding this uh, by integrating with the Copilot as a library, and you can see what are the advantages. And you can, like I mentioned, you can try with this freeware only. But I think it's a 30-day free version, so that you can understand how we can use this one. Yeah, I think majority of people are using Chat GPT. I think it's almost on the same lines. The prompts will be on the same lines only. But just for your understanding, you can actually try to, and I can go through it. You can explore this Copilot. So, and there are some updated versions are also coming up. There are, like I mentioned, the code review is one which is missing in the developer version. And see, apart from the code review, there is another feature where you can actually ask for, it will actually connect you to the database also. It is in the business version. So if you have an external database and if you want to set up the database from your side, the Copilot is actually doing it. So that's in the new version which we are using recently, which is something missing in the developer version. So there are some additional features also there with the business version. So even it's, I think from the last 6-7 months only, people started using Copilot, right? There are more versions are going to come in future, which will further eases the developer's life. So if possible, please go through this Copilot and just use some basic examples and explore on it. Any questions? I think we have 3 more minutes left. So
Copilot, I think in the backend uses GPT itself, right, as a model.
right. Yeah. It's not GPT 4.0, it's GPT 3.0 only, the APIs which Copilot is using. So as of now, it is using 3.0 only. I think it's going to update to
Right.
4.0 also. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Dr. Manoj here. So any further any questions? We can take one last question for to end the session, first session. Okay. Yeah. So first, I would like to extend my thanks to Kaushik for making this, accepting the request and sharing his knowledge in the live application with respect to Copilot. So it's really thanks, everyone. It is a very informative session for all the participants. So hope we have gone through that Copilot and it was very informative. We shared a lot of real-time applications. So thanks for you and making it possible in your busy schedule of your work. So thank you very much for joining the session and sharing your knowledge with all our faculty fraternity. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So I think Preeti ma'am, you can take over. You can start with the next session.
So now we can take a 5-minute breaks. Thank you so much, Kaushik sir. Hello. Thank you so much, Kaushik sir, for this interactive and informative presentation. And we truly appreciate your time and expertise. Now we can have a 5-minute break. So we will start again promptly at 11:35. It is an honor to introduce our stream. Welcome everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. You can start.
So welcome everyone in our next session. So it is an honor to introduce our esteemed speaker for today's faculty development program second session, Mr. Karthik GCR sir. Karthik sir has over 2 years of industry experience and more than 7 years dedicated to teaching an academic field. He has been organized as fellow at Infosys Inspire Partnership Program, receiving silver and bronze partnership awards in 2017 and 18. He has received multiple awards for his exceptional services and technical contributions. Karthik sir has also contributed significantly to curriculum development and the implementation of informative teaching methodology, and that's making him as invaluable resource for our FDP today. So we are privileged to have him share his experience with us. Please join me in welcoming Karthik sir.
Thank you, Preeti ma'am. Thank you for the brief introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'll just take a moment to share my screen.
Karthik sir, are you there? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible? Hi, am I audible? Please confirm.
Yes, Karthik, you're audible. You can start.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Preeti ma'am, for the brief introduction. Let me just share the screen. Hope you are able to see the screen. Could you please confirm if you're able to see my screen? Okay, great. Thank you, Preeti ma'am. Good morning, everyone. Uh, I'd like to thank the Department of CSE GCEM for giving me an opportunity to uh, address you all with a session on Google Gemini. So I am pretty much sure many of you would have heard about Google Gemini and its counterpart ChatGPT. So today in my session, I'll be focusing on Google Gemini, what is Google Gemini, etc. I'll give you a brief introduction of it and its capabilities. And then what I would also focus on is, unlike an individual user, I'd like to show you two different perspectives of using Google Gemini. One is an individual end user perspective, where an end user generally we could go on to use uh, Google Gemini for easing up our tasks on a day-to-day basis. And the other version that I would like to show is the developer version, where developers can use Python SDK of Google Gemini to uh, integrate into their Python code and go ahead and use that Gemini's capability in their programming or development. So that is what we will be focusing in our session for the next hour or so. So first of all, what exactly is Google Gemini? Google Gemini is basically a revolution. It is indeed a revolutionary model of late, quite from the time of GPT, once the OpenAI released. There is immense amount of research development and product development in the area of generative AI. And one such product is Google's Gemini. It's an AI model or a suite of AI models, I would like to say it, which has capability to write or create different format of text, different languages it can translate it into. It can, use Q&A, and it can, it's multimodal in nature. Basically, it can work with text inputs, images, and it can understand information on audio. It can understand code and help you write code and things like that, right? So if you see this, you would think that this is, if you are also a user of ChatGPT, you think that this is exactly same as ChatGPT. Of course, yes, ChatGPT is a Microsoft or OpenAI's LLM, and Gemini is its counterpart, Google's LLM. So that apart, uh, there are a lot of difference in terms of their abilities and their results in terms of beating the standard benchmark and etc. So theoretically, or if you look at perspective of how the model is, the result of the model is outperformed quite an extent from the GPT's performance. I would like to note here. Now, Google Gemini comes in 3 different modes. There is also a new mode which is released called Flash. So now, first one is called as Ultra. Ultra is the biggest model which is capable of handling highly complex tasks. So Ultra is not yet open for all. It is open for selected individuals to use. And Google is in the process of fine-tuning Ultra, and hopefully it would be released sometime probably in next year. Then the most frequently used version is called as Gemini Pro. It's the best model what is available for everyone, for us, which can perform wide variety of tasks. Apart from that, there is also a model called Flash, which is basically a lightweight model for the Pro. Flash is also Flash version is 1.5, which I would be showing it to in a small demo how Flash can be used to understand image and things like that. And then Gemini also comes in a very lightweight on-device mode, where it's called as Gemini Nano. It is used in Pixel 8, Google 4. It can be used, and it is quite an performer on small devices or on-device tasks. So the amount of compute it would require is quite less when comparatively, because it's a lightweight model. So what adds, in terms of, let's quickly look at what is the uniqueness of Gemini in terms of architectural and its capability perspective. When we talk about architecture, Gemini is basically a transformer architecture. So because of this kind of architecture, I guess our speaker yesterday, Christopher, was outlining on what a typical transformer is and what are the layers, what is attention, etc. He also spoke about what is the relevance of context and how to understand the relationship between words and sentences, right? So that architecture is what Google is using. So it's multimodal. So when we say multimodal, it's not something that only text that it understands. Gemini can understand text, images, audio, and also the code, which is of course in the text form. It has better capability to process, reason, and solve problems in terms of its capabilities. And it has very deep understanding of context, right? So if you look at Gemini Ultra, the amount of context that it can hold is basically 1 million tokens, right? In terms of Gemini Pro, it is 32,000 tokens can be at a time processed and the context can be made out of. So it is quite a powerful tool. So it is very powerful in terms of establishing context and relationship between the text and things. That's why. So another thing is this is the same in terms of even GPT, but GPT also releases in terms of version. So Gemini is also continuously learning. So everything that you prompt, everything that it generates, everything that is out there, it keeps learning, it keeps improving in terms of its performance. So that is a quick glimpse of the architectural and capacity-wise perspectives of Gemini. Now, if we look at what are the applications, Gemini can be used for text generation and like that. It can also use for creative writing. You see, once this generative AI boom came, content writing has quite normalized, and content writing has been quite effective in terms of its results, right? So Gemini LLM model can also be used in translation, summarization of text. The beauty of summarization of in terms of see, I'll be showing you how seamlessly Gemini can be integrated with different apps in your Google, right? So it can help you in code generation, Q&A, education. So basically, using the developer version, you could also integrate it for having personalized learning in terms of its effectiveness in education, but the same personalization could be done in terms of research and business, right? Now, how do you actually access Gemini? If you look at Gemini has three different versions to, three different ways to access. One is Gemini can be accessed by individuals using Gemini AI Studio. It's a web-based tool. It's similar to your ChatGPT. So you can go in there, put in a chat or a prompt, and then it's just an interface for the model where you can interact in an interactive mode as an individual. Apart from that, for the developers and enterprises, Gemini can be accessed using Gemini API. So we will be going through these two modes and understand how this is accessed or used in our development or as an individual in our day-to-day life. The third way of using Gemini is Pixel Pro. Uses, as I said, Gemini Nano comes inbuilt with Pixel Pro 8. So it is also it can also be used on Pixel Pro 8. So now let's look at the first way of accessing our Gemini, the developer or an enterprise edition, how to use Gemini API along with Python is what we will be focusing on. However, Gemini API can be used with multiple different programming languages. So what is a Gemini API basically? So Gemini API is a versatile tool which is used by developers, which can be used to access Gemini models and allow developers to generate text, integrate prompting in their tools and translate languages. All the capabilities of Gemini models can be utilized within the programming language, whatever they want, using the Gemini API. Now, Gemini API, as I said already, that it is available in multiple programming languages: Python, Node.js, Go, Dart, Android, Swift, etc. What we will be focusing on this session is how to integrate or how to use Gemini API in Python. That is what we are going to look at. Now, how do you use Python SDK for Gemini API? So this is exactly the flow that we are going to use. First, we are going to look at how to set up a development environment for using Python SDK. And then we will see how to access the API. So API access needs you to generate an API key, and though it's a free version which can be used by developers now. So we will see how to generate a key and then go ahead use it. And then we will see what are the different API methods using which we can prompt using text. What are the different ways it get processed? Multimodal inputs also, we will see both text and images and things of that sort. We'll also see how Gemini can be versioned, or a chat can be built where there is kind of a prompt to prompt context is built, and how this can be taken up as a chat conversation. And then we will see Gemini as an individual perspective how to use. So this will be our agenda for today. Now, prerequisites would be we need Python 3.9 plus, and we also need environment like Jupyter Notebook or Google Colab. So in this setup, we will be using Google Colab to walk over through how to use Gemini using Python. However, if you are working on a special project or something, you can set up a similar environment of your own and then try to make use of it. So to start with, we need to install the Python SDK for Gemini API in order for us to work with Gemini models. So the Google -generative AI package is the package which we can use, which gives us access to multiple models. We will have to install it in our environment using pip install -q-u this command. So we will be running this and we will be seeing all these things. I just have a couple of slides for initial steps, and then we will move to Google Colab to see how things work. Then we import the steps. We import other libraries. We use TextWrapper and Portlib and display and markdown in order to process the prompt response and then display it in a markdown manner. So just to format our output, we are using this. So we are just importing this. And then we are also using Colab's user data in order to store our API in the environment and have an authorization for us to use the API. So with this, let's quickly move on to our this notebook. This notebook is built and ready. So I would be sharing this notebook with you so that you could also work with this notebook. And if you have any issues or if you have any concerns later on, you could always reach out to me and we could take it from there. So we would be looking at how to interact with Gemini API using Python, how this Python SDK of Gemini API can be used. So initially, as part of the steps that I told, we would be installing our Python SDK. So this is the command for Python SDK that I already showed you. So I'm just running this. I'm already connected to my environment. So this is installed. Now I'm importing the packages and just writing a function to display the markdown version of the responses, whatever I'm getting. I'm using the notebooks display and markdown methods for that. Now, once I'm set up with these functions, now I am ready to move ahead with setting up my API. Now, in order for us to use this API, we need something called as an API key, which basically gives us an authorization for us to access API of Google, right? Now, this is a link. The link I would be sharing you the this notebook into the Google Drive. So you would have access to this link. So you need not to worry about that. Now, if you go to Google AI Studio, so you are prompted with a message here. Do you want to use Google AI Studio for new prompt like an individual, or do you want to develop your own environment? In that case, you need to get an API key. Click on API, get an API key. So you are here where in the AI Studio where you can generate API key for Gemini API. Now, though it says pay as you go pricing, but it is, I have already taken one API key here. So it is free of charge. There is no billing associated with it. So right now, Google is giving it away. So you can try and work with it if you want. Now, click on create API. Accept the terms. Then it asks you, do you want to create a project or do you want to apply it on the existing project? Because I already have my project here which is created. I'm not getting this prompt again. You can click on this create API key with the existing project, or and eventually a new project. I can click on that, but you will be prompted to create a new project. Click on the new project and you would get this API key. So this is basically my API key, which is automatically generated. Whenever you are generating an API key, please do not disclose it to anyone, because that API key could be accessed by others in your credentials, right? So you are supposed to copy this API key and then go back here. The instructions are given here. However, I'm just showing it to you. If you see here, there is a secrets tab on your Google Colab. Click on that. Now I have already generated a key. So if you have not generated any key, you will not have anything here. So click on this add new secret, and then you name it like this, Google underscore API underscore key. That will be your key name, and then paste your API key. So this is my API key, if you can see. So, and just give the notebook access to it. If it is disabled, you will not be able to. Just give the notebook access to it. Now you have imported this already, so this works. This we have executed this already, so I can use this in my Google Colab seamlessly. Now, in order to use this, you can actually add this Google API key into your environment variable, and you can use genai.config. Basically, genai is this Google generative AI SDK, whatever we have imported, that is being used with the term genai. So genai.config, and then we give API key as os.environ. Here we are adding this environment key with Google API key as the name of the environment, and we are trying to run this in order to do the handshake. Now that we are set up, our API key is accessed, and it's accessible. We can work with our APIs. Now, see, there is a function called list models, which will help you list all the models which are available in Gen AI or Generate AI library, right? So there are two versions, Gemini Pro and Gemini Pro Vision. Gemini Pro is for text only prompts. Gemini Pro Vision is for text and image prompts. However, Gemini Pro Vision was recently deprecated, and instead of that, you can use Gemini 1.5 Flash, right? So if you iterate through this list models and try to see what are the models that you can use, it will list you all this. So there are multiple versions. There is Gemini Pro 1.5, Gemini Pro 1.0, right? Then there is Gemini Pro Vision, etc. There is Gemini Pro Flash 1.5 Flash, right? So we cannot use Ultra because it is not open, and we cannot use Nano because it is for on-device usage. Now, Gemini Pro is limited in terms of its usage. At per minute, you can have 60 requests only. However, you can go for an paid version and increase the requests per minute if you're trying to integrate it into your application. Now we have this method called generative model. Generative model is basically a method which you can use to pick what model you want to use in your SDK. Now you're running this. If I'm running this, the Gemini Pro version is being used, and that is being defined with assigned to a model object, right? Now we can to this model supply our prompt, into a function called generate content. Because we are using Gemini Pro, we'll use text prompts and try to understand how this works. Now I am doing model is basically Gemini Pro here. So model dot generate content, and then I'm giving my text or prompt as a text here, as a string. Now if I am running this, so this prompt got run, and this response for this will be available in response.text. So I have already created how the markdown has to be printed. So according to that format, the response.text is getting printed here. So this is the text that it has generated. So my prompt here is, what is the future of generative AI, and it is giving you this response, right? Instead of this, I can give another prompt. I can tell it, tell me a joke. So, and if I display, there is a joke. What do you call a belt made out of watches? A waste of time. So that's a joke that it generated, right? So like this, you can give you a prompt and you can capture it in response.text, which will have the result of our prompt. Now see, if your prompt doesn't give any response, in that case you can see what is the feedback, why that prompt is not getting generated. So sometimes depending on prompt to prompt, you get to see this response. Because our prompt got generated, we don't have any feedback on this. Now if you see here, Gemini has something called as safety ratings. Okay, now depending on what your prompt is, the prompts get rated into 4 categories called sexually explicit prompt, hate speech prompt, harassment prompt, and dangerous content prompt. Now, if you look at all these 4 categories, there is something called as probability. So the probability is basically given as negligible, medium, and high. So it tries to categorize your prompt into what type of prompt it is. So if your prompt falls into any of these categories, if you see there is something for harassment, right? So I have given how to insult others. And if I see what is the response for it, I can't help you with that. It is not appropriate to insult others, right? Let's see, this is a response, so the feedback doesn't get generated. Anyway, so if you see how to kill someone, it says, I will not answer this question. Violence is not an answer, and etc. etc. It gives you prompt for suicide prevention things, right? Now, depending on what prompt you are giving, it categorizes. For a certain prompt, it is categorized insulting as harassment, right, into medium. So depending on what kind of safety rating you are getting, you can block or unblock whatever the data that you want to respond in your API. I would be showing that. Now, the thing is, whenever you give a prompt, right, Gemini doesn't generate one single response. Or if you see, tell me a joke, right? So there is no one single response that it has generated. It has generated 3 drafts, or we call them as 3 candidates, right? And those candidates, one of that is given as response. Now, if you see here, this is one of the candidate that it is given. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he has an outstanding in the field. It is categorized as negligible on all safety ratings, right? Now, if I try to do this for how to insult others, and if I see the candidates for this, I'm sorry, and gives negligible. It's not. Let's say how to kill. Now, if you see here, the rating is given as negligible. However, it is not stopping the giving the response. There are some things which it stops the response if there is a reason which is flagged as probability for sexually explicit content, hate speech, or harassment or dangerous content. It would flag the medium and the uh, high category of probabilities. In that case, it won't give you any response. Now, if you see, this is basically an object and there are two entries into this. This is the text, which is the response to your prompt, and then the role. The role basically tells this is built over if you give a context to it, there will be multiple parts to it. The prompt is a text, and then the role will be prompted by the user, and then its response is a text, and then the role will be given by the model. You can go on building a context like this using the responses. Now, Gemini doesn't basically give the response all at once, you see. So what Gemini does is it generates response in some parts of chunks, right? Small parts of text will be generated. Now you can also, if you see this response.text, what you get is the output once the content is completely generated. However, if you want to stream it, right? Streaming meaning to say that you want to generate it as and when it is getting generated. You want to use it as and when it is getting generated. In that case, you can give in the generate context along with your prompt stream is equal to true. So if you give stream is equal to true, now the response will be broken into chunks, and using the chunks you can access it. Now if you see my response, I am accessing it in a loop, and whatever the chunk that I'm accessing, after this chunk text, I am writing a line. And if I try to execute this, I can see how many chunks of text are being streamed, right? Like this in my, I can utilize the different text and try to stream it depending on what is getting created once at a time. Now, if you see there is this stream, this much is one stream because there is a line here. And then this is one stream, this is one chunk. After that, it continued to generate another chunk of data. Like this. So it is generated it in three chunks of variations, right? Your response is streamed into three different levels. So as soon as this much is available, you can directly access it in your chunk and try to stream it in your application. Now we can also, this is about using text, right? So we can also use the Gemini Pro, the deprecated version. We can use the latest version. However, I am going to show you with Gemini Flash model. So to give, to interact in a multimodal way, we can give both text and image inputs to your prompts, and we can work with it. Now there is this small image that I have taken. Just uh, so this is the image that I've taken. This is some kind of a salad that is available. Now I am curling this into my environment. So if I curl this into my environment, I got this image here, right? So So I'm just I'll just show it here. So if I execute this, if I open this image is what I'm going to get. So I'm just displaying this image here for you, right? So this is the image that we get. Now this image is in an object called img. Okay. Now I am using Gemini 1.5 Flash. You can use Gemini Pro Vision latest if you want. And I am asking it, I am just giving this as this image as my prompt, and it is telling that this image is basically, this image shows 2 glass containers filled with cooked chicken, broccoli, carrots, peppers, and rice. Chicken, broccoli, pepper, and carrot, and rice. 2 glass containers. There are 2 chopsticks. These 2 are our chopsticks, and a small ball of sesame seeds. Oh, sorry, there is no ball. It assumes, oh, this small ball of sesame seeds. The container looks like they could be meal prep containers for lunch, right? So it tried to interpret this image and give you response based on what this image is. Now to the image you can also prompt a text. Now what I'm doing is to this model I am asking it to generate. I am giving this image and also giving the text prompt. Write a short engaging blog post based on this picture. It should include description of the photo and talk about the activities. Now I am setting stream. So if I do this and try to look at the response, so there is a small blog which is prepared. Lunchtime bliss, easy and delicious meal prep. This picture is a perfect example of easy and delicious meal prep. 2 glass containers were filled with healthy and flavorable meal ready to be enjoyed, so and so. So with a pro tip to use pre-portioned meals to help you stay on track with healthy eating goals and things like that. It basically wrote a small blog post on what and how, depending on the text prompt that I have given. So it basically understood the image, the context of it. Then depending on the prompt that I have given, it is able to generate the response to the prompt, right? So this is about interacting with the prompt, the text, and the image. Now, apart from interacting on just text mode or image and text mode, I can also build chat conversation, right? Now, if you see, I'm getting back to my Gemini Pro. I am using this model.start chat. This will have object of class GMT, this gml.contains object. We will discuss what that object is eventually. So right. So this has initiated a session and the chat history is empty right? Now I can go on interacting with this model in a chat mode. If you see, I am giving chat.send message. I'm saying in one sentence, explain how a computer works to a young child. And if I am trying to display this, right? So it just says the computer is a special machine that can store and use information to help us do our work, play games, and more. Just for a young child, how it has to be explained, it is explained. Now, if you look at the chat.history, this is our chat.history. This object is generated now. Now, if you see, there are 2 parts to it. The first part is basically a dictionary, which has text and the prompt, and what is the role that gave this text. So if you see, the role is user. That means this is the user's prompt. In a sentence, explain how this works. This is the prompt. And then you have text, and the role is model. This text is generated by the AI as its response to the prompt that has been given. That's why it has been given as role. So we have two roles here, the user role and the model role. So depending on this, we can go on having a chat conversation. Now, if you see, okay, now I am still chatting with it. After this response, I'm giving it more context. Now, how about more detailed explanation to a high schooler, right? Now I am streaming it. I'll run this as chunk and see what is the response that I would get. Now see here, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chunks of response. That is one single response. You can do response.text and you would get everything in a markdown manner, but we just displaying it in chunks as and when it is streaming. That's all. So a computer is an electronic device that can be programmed to carry out a set of instructions. It consists of hardware. Like that, it is going on more detailed version, right? So now if you look at, try and understand this data, right? We looked at it. This basically is, this history is basically an object called GLM content, which has list of GLM parts. Now this is our GLM content, and this has list of GML parts. Now this is a part list and this is a part list, right? Like this, it goes on developing your history. Okay. Every history either has the text, or it can also have GLM blob. Basically, it is image or any binary data if you have non-textual information, right? Now, I am trying to give it in a markdown manner and try and see how the same GLM content can be understood in a proper chat-based model. See here, this is the content that has been generated. Right? I'm trying to present one sentence explain how a computer works to younger child. The model says this, and then okay, now explain me like for an high schooler, and then it went on to explain it like this. So the chat history is basically accumulating context and building the conversation and keeping the context in sense, right? Now you can also count the tokens in the context, how many you have. Now, if you count in this, how many tokens are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the question mark. There are 8 tokens. It should tell me there are 8 tokens, right? Now we also have multiple tokens which was generated in my chat history, right? Let us see what count how many tokens it has generated. It has generated 451 tokens. Like this Gemini Ultra can have token capability of 1 million tokens in order to have a context. It can be told and processed. Similarly, 32,000 somewhere around our Gemini Pro can hold in terms of context. Now, yesterday we had Christopher who was explaining us what text embeddings are. Now, this depending on what kind of document you are using, text embeddings are automatically generated by your Gemini. We can also what is the task, the text embedding that we have, and the description is listed here. If you see, this is our GLM content object. This we already saw this, right? Now I can go on using embed content on the data chat history, and it goes on to give me it's trimmed because there's a lot of huge values which are present. It went on to give me what are embeddings which are available. Now, if you want to use these embeddings in your applications, you can directly use this also and utilize these embeddings in your training in your own models and things of that sort. Now, when it comes to safety settings, right? I told you there are 4 different safety settings which are available. Now I give you hit someone. It's negligible. He is giving negligible because everything the response is getting generated. No, whatever the prompt I'm giving, it is giving as negligible. It is classifying it as negligible. However, the text is getting generated. The prompt is getting generated. So if you have any particular prompt where this is medium, this is categorized as medium or let's say uh, high, then automatically the prompt will be stopped. The Gemini model will stop generating the response and it would not be allowed in order for you to generate any response, right? You can also basically, so because I got the response, the prompt feedback will be this thing less. Now, if I have any content, the prompt, I can disable or basically block what kind of detail I want. So even if it is dangerous and you don't want the dangerous response to be stopped or blocked by Gemini, you can give safety settings while you are generating with the prompt. Safety settings is equal to dangerous or harassment or hate speech or sexually explicit is equal to block none. Like, similar to block none, you have block medium, block high, block all. So different values are available for safety settings. So these can be utilized in order to unblock the responses, right? If it is blocked, if your content is blocked. Now we will also look at how more information can be. Just give me a minute. Sorry for that brief interruption. Now you can also go on to build GLM contents parts, something like this. If you see here, I have a role and paths built into a list, and then I am directly giving that list as my prompt, right? I am not directly just giving the prompt. I am giving the complete GLM object, whatever I want, as into my generate content, and still my content gets generated here. Briefly explain how a computer works, right? And I can also continue my go on having my object building, right? So I can append to the same messages what I have built this list. I can append the model response into it, and then I can ask more. What do you want? Explain it to high school teacher, something like this. And still, though it is the history is available, you can build your own GLM content and content object and work with that in your context of development. Now, what I have here is messages which I have built it. It is not the history. I am building it by manually appending one after the other. So, am I getting? Okay, one second. Parts. I will redo this and then it. So the context got built, and this is the response that I have. I just took the model response for this prompt. I can go on to append it and create a list of all GLM objects like this using on my own. So yeah, this is about how we can go ahead utilizing Gemini API along with Python in order to use it in our programming and utilize the power of Gemini models and integrate it into what use case, whatever different use cases that we want to use on. Now, up next, I would like to move towards use of Gemini interface or Gemini app for an individual. I would like to demonstrate, though this is similar to your chat GPT, this has good features and additional capabilities which I'd like to showcase to you. Before moving on to that, do I have any questions? All right, so let's move on to the Gemini app. So this Gemini.google.com, once initially when you go, you will have to accept your terms and condition of Google and etc. See, you can give image prompts and you can give audio and you can tell about yourself. So it will talk about Gemini. So I can prompt it and it goes on building prompts, right? I can tell me a joke, right? Now, for every prompt, as I told you, Gemini doesn't just respond, generate one response, but it has different candidates, right? Now you can look at all these candidates using show graphs here. So I showed you how to do that in the API. Now, if you see, there is this joke. There are 3 different versions to this joke graph. Similarly, tell me about yourself. If I go, explain what is AI. So it generated some response here for us, right? Show drafts. If you see, there are 3 different, 2 more different candidates which are available. We can select the appropriate candidate that you want, right? Now you can also set the tone of your response. You want it to be shorter, you want it to be longer, simpler, more casual, more professional. So you can use it in generating the content accordingly. And you can also share it into an Docs or any other app, and you can also use it to store it in draft Gmail, right? So this pretty much is, you can read it out as well. Pretty much is similar to your chat GPT use case, right? Apart from the draft or candidate generation. What I want to show you is basically here, if you go to settings and click on extension and enable Google Workspace, in that case, if you enable it, then you can seamlessly integrate Gemini into your workspace in your prompts. Now, I want to show you some use cases. Now, if you see at the rate of, it lists all Google's applications which are available in Google Workspace. Okay. Now, I want to show you one small use case of how effectively you can use Gemini with Loop, right? Now, if you see, this is my simple inbox. I am searching my NBA, right? The term NBA. The specific term NBA is available in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. But what you have to note here is I have multiple mails which are not even relevant for me. So now I can use it to generate or pick up my mails very effectively, right? Another thing is, if I want to use any mail, say I want to use this, I want to open this mail. If I want, I can't open it in my new tab, or I want to open it using control click or things like that. I will have to click here and then open it in the same tab. I can't on it? Yeah, I select @Gmail and do show me emails with on NBA from last 3 months. It seamlessly searches my Gmail without any issue and picks out the emails which have which are on NBA, and it lists it. I couldn't find. There is only one email with NBA. I will do this, which is there is indeed only one email. If I say last 4 or 5 months, see, it goes on to show me 2-3 emails which are present. Now, if I was searching that here, I have a chunk of data to process. But now, if you see, I have this. If I just click on this, it opens in new tab, whatever I want, right? So I can go on to use Gemini like this, and now I can use it to summarize something. See here. Now I also have, let's say, there is a file which I have. Just give me a moment, please. It's quite slow. So if I click on this, so I can ask @ Google Drive, summarize photography event .pdf. So I can similarly select an image what I want. If it finds multiple files, it would tell that I found multiple file and etc. It's going to showcase, summarize me this. Basically, it goes on to summarize this in its own manner. It tries to interpret it and it goes on to quickly summarize it. There's another thing that I wanted to show you. If I take a screenshot of this quickly, I am for some reason. Yeah. if I take just take the snippet. Go over here, paste that image, convert this into tabular form. If I do this, it seamlessly converts the data into the tabular form. It interprets the image twice and understands it, and it did convert it into tabular form like this. Now, another beauty of this is you can directly export it into Excel sheet, right? So things like that, you can work on multiple use cases by integrating seamlessly into any of this. You can summarize a video, you can ask it to create a task and things like that using Gemini, and interact it like an individual user. So that's something that I wanted to showcase to you guys. Okay, now I think pretty much that's it. I wanted to show you guys today. Any questions? I'm open for Q&A. Any questions for today? Right. I think then we shall close the session for today. So that's about it for today. We shall continue with the next session on tomorrow. Thank you, madam. Thank you all for joining for today's session. Hope it was a good learning experience. You had a good knowledge takeaway out of these sessions for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Have a good day.